August 17th. And again, as a special meeting, we don't vote on minutes, so we'll be doing that at the next meeting on August 31st. So first things first, update on booster clubs. Over to you, Colin.
Oh, I forgot that was first. So thank you for the public who might be listening. I'm Colleen DC. I am the Executive Director of Personnel and Legal Services. So we are going to be, we're planning to start planning, essentially, the work on this. We're going to be meeting with the athletic directors and the house head principals, start mapping out how this work could look going forward in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, and can you give, just as a synopsis, because the last meeting I knew of was one where it conflicted with the meeting we were having, so you had to leave that one. So what kind of groundwork did get laid last year?
Last year we started, and obviously it was a bumpy year in every respect, but we did start meeting with the athletic committee regularly, and from there will be a subcommittee of folks who are looking to partner on this work.
Was there, Mike Cummings, superintendent, I believe there's 3 subcommittees?
There are 3, this is one of them.
Yeah, and I will also add to this, if Connie, if you're all set.
Yes, thank you.
The only thing I would add to that, we did meet with Mr. Hassett last week, Dr. Parrish, Stacey, and myself, and we talked about the timeline to go forward. We stressed the importance of bringing the athletic directors in to help lead this work. So that is, we're going to set up a meeting for when school gets going and we're past the kind of inauguration of the fall athletic season. Get together with the ADs, the 2 head principals, to plan out the meeting dates for the year, as well as the agendas, to start bringing the work forward.
And can you just remind me the 3 subcommittees? I thought at one point it had been 4. Is that not the case?
I think he mentioned 3.
Okay.
You remember what they are? I apologize. I don't.
There's one for, and I'm sorry, I don't have it written down either at the moment. There's one for facilities.
That's right.
And then there's one, I believe, for essentially promotion.
And that facilities from booster clubs?
No, those are the subcommittees of the whole athletic.
Oh, the whole.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
The oversight of the athletic committee.
Like if booster clubs are getting involved in facilities, I'm going to watch what they sign up for. Okay, so when do you think would be a good time for us to put this back on our calendar for, like, give you an idea, like, are they going to probably do something monthly, or do you not have that sense?
It's hard to say at this point. I think it might be good for us to revisit in October, once we are able to get the fall season started, and to make space for this work.
And how wide a net are you casting in terms of parental involvement with this?
That's part of the planning. That hasn't been nailed down yet.
Okay. All right.
I was just going to only add, I'm sorry, that we would revisit the invitation.
Okay.
You know, in other words, if we start a new season, new parents come into the high school, I think it's important that we continually kind of regenerate.
Well, that was my concern, not only that we make sure that all seasons are, have a chance to be involved, but also that this is not just restricted to parents of captains, that this is, it's, I want everyone to know that this work is going on and everyone know the nature of the conversation. That's our whole reason of doing this, so that nobody's blindsided by the work or the intent or the folk or the goals. So, okay, all right, so we'll plan on that in October. Jen?
Are you going to have student representatives, or is there a plan to incorporate student representative and voice in this?
It's one of the things we talked about, and I think that given the, I think we should. I mean, as we were just talking about the equity work at the event, the opportunities for students to become part of these leadership structures is really important, and to give them voice. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. All right, thank you. Update on grading policy.
We met with since we were last together, we've met twice with the both the middle school and high school administrative teams around this. There was a decision, I think I shared with the policy committee that that we were not going to bring teachers back in August, but they are, as part of their opening day work with the staff next week, the principals are going to seek volunteers to start working on the grading committees. As in the past, we were more confined to high school teachers. The middle school administrators are going to be sure to include middle school teachers on this work now going forward as well. So they talked when we met last, they talked about some readings they want them to engage in. The administrators did develop this summer kind of a policy to react to, a draft policy to react to. So rather than begin with nothing, a blank piece of paper, we took some of the policies that were out there already. We Frankensteined some of it together, and we essentially came to a place where we were in agreement around what was there, in the sense of this is things we want to put in front of the staff. None of that should be a surprise to staff who've been engaged in the work. None of it really was a surprise to you because it's stuff that you've already seen. But we didn't want to start with a blank piece of paper. We wanted to start with something.
Right.
So that will be part of the work that we go with the teachers. We talked about being able to come back to the policy committee. Well, we can give you a monthly update, but I think that my hope would be that we'd have at least an initial place for a conversation by the October meeting. As we talked about with them, stressing the timeline as a test is something we want to accomplish by the end of the school year.
Okay, for a deadline on that, didn't we set something much earlier? And I'm not saying that was a reasonable timeline, but.
No, we did. We talked about the idea that we wanted a strong draft earlier so that we could go through the iterative process.
Okay.
Knowing how we did the work around the homework policy.
Yep.
That there was a series of meetings, and I think even we had.
I think we had to add a couple meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be part of the process. And this, as you're aware, is going to probably involve more staff than that did. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is part of the challenge, but also part of, I think, will lead to a better result.
Just checking, do you think October is early enough for us to take a look at anything? And again, and I'm not talking about us at all getting into wordsmithing or anything like that, but purely as reaction. Do you think?
I think it is. I think if we, can, let's say that in October, we could have representatives of the committee at the policy meeting. In September, I can give you an update, I believe, on what, and if I don't feel like I can, either one of the executive directors or the head principals can. But in October, we should think about one of those meetings that we had, I believe it was in May, where more of the staff came together.
Okay.
And we had more of a collaborative. If that works for the policy committee, I would stress that I forget offhand the October date, policy meeting date, but I'd put that out to you as an idea.
Okay, so we've got, it goes August 31st, then not until September 21st, so maybe on the 21st we can get just an informal update from you.
Mm-hmm.
And then that leaves us October 5th and the 19th.
Why don't we do the 19th?
Okay.
Can I comment, Jen?
Sure.
We had given some initial input, so was that shared as well as you are going forward with?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything that we talked about
Okay.
is in folders for them to see. I made a copy of my notes.
Okay.
And there will be correspondence going out. Well, I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Carol, anything?
No,
On this good?
sounds like a good timeline.
Okay. And again, I thank you, Jen, for asking it, because obviously the concern, I would hate for staff to be pursuing a path and investing a lot of time in it, and it's not something that the board is interested in. So thank you for that. And obviously, if, Mr. Cummings, if it should come up earlier that our input is wanted, even on just something small, at either the 31st or the September 21st meeting, or the earlier October meeting, please just, that shouldn't be hard to put on there. Okay, so discussion of mask break policy. I added this to the agenda, and again, my apologies to people in the room and to anyone listening and to anybody in the boardroom that I was careless when I created the agenda the first time, and for that I apologize. When I left off the word break, that at first, the first draft of the agenda had said discussion of mask policy, so I apologize for that. So the mask break policy is something that's kind of arisen from community conversation of, obviously it's, all last year it was the stance of staff and the board that students were having this opportunity, teachers were using their judgment, et cetera, to make sure that kids of all ages were getting their chance at the mask breaks. And there's just the feeling from some that it has been, that there isn't complete consistency, that while I have no doubt about the intent of staff, you know, of caring for their children, that there is a sense that it's being done differently. And that, did the board need to take up a policy or not? So I just asked if Mr. Cummings would be available and could speak to the topic, and then we could have discussion from there. And I assume that you would be the one to
Yes.
take lead on this. Okay.
Going back to last year, what we talked about with the staff, and this is primarily a K-8 issue, was we asked principals to build mass breaks into schedule. I mean, you know, the use of taking students outside, we talked through the logistics as to when the weather was bad, just walking them in the halls, using the tents, those types of things. You know, in conversations with the principals, and we also said, in addition to anything that was scheduled, we said to the staff, if you feel that the kids need something, you know, you don't need permission to do that. You can take them out when you feel it's appropriate. So I think to the issue of inconsistency, I think there will be inconsistencies dependent on different classes at different times and the schedule of what's going on in the classroom at the time it's happening. So there are things that in my communication with some folks, there's a belief that the math break happens only outside of the building. So if the kids didn't go outside, they didn't necessarily get a math break, which isn't accurate. They may just take a couple turns around the gym without their mask and appropriately distanced. So I think the issue, as I said, I think the issue of inconsistency may tie to the instructional decisions and the scheduling decisions that individual teachers will make. We did build it into the schedules, and I said again to the principal today when we were together that should be part of their schedule this year as they're going forward, just like we're saying that they're going to have to continue the extended lunch periods at the elementary school, for example, right now. And they're going to have to continue to use the additional spaces for lunch at all levels. My concern with a policy would be that it would supersede the instructional decisions that teachers make. That would be my concern with it. And that if families don't feel that it's happening, then that's a conversation that they need to have specifically either with the teacher or with the building administration to make sure, to find out why, first of all, why it didn't happen, and then to advocate for it to happen. But it is already an expectation last year and emphasized again today that should be happening.
And I was wondering what are the directions then to the teachers of how a mask break happens? Again, I think the easy one is if you take a walk outside and they take their masks off. I understand what that looks like. And that also, therefore, does not involve a student having to make a choice. You can play with your friends here, you know, with your masks on, or you can go take a walk, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But aside from the scenario of being outside, or the example you give, going to the gym, assuming there's not a class being offered, how else would the mask break happen?
It's happened where on days of rain or it was particularly cold outside, they would take the mask off, separate out 6 feet, and walk down the hall, and they do kind of a loop around the building. That happened too. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the options that was given to staff. Now, we didn't quantify, like, you know, I don't want to. I hope this doesn't come across as being anything but sincere, but we didn't ask them to kind of quantify different times of day different happened. We just said that given whatever the outside circumstances are, you need to give kids a break. And I'm forgetting and leaving out that also that individual students may need a break.
Right.
So there was times when, you know, you'd say in classrooms to a kid, if everybody else had their mask on, pull your mask down for a couple minutes. And that would be something that would happen as well. So there's both the classroom setting and then the individual, or the classroom mask break and then the individual mask break if needed.
Carol, go ahead. Oh, no, I've got a few questions, but it doesn't matter what order we do them in, so
okay.
go.
Just in terms of the expectation at specifically the middle school level, it seemed to me that I was hearing that people were having the math breaks at a certain time during the day during a certain period. Is that built into the schedule now as an extra long period? Because what was happening for an extended period of time was that kids were losing 5 or 10 minutes of math every day, or whatever the subject was. So, and I can see how that's problematic from an instructional standpoint, but it's also stressful for the students. So, what does that look like?
Yeah, thank you, because do you remember, I think that they were rotating it through the periods, weren't they?
It wasn't, they rotated by grade, so
Oh,
all 3 grades didn't do it at the same time, but it was during a set period, or like 6th grade had it during period 4. You know, it was staggered so that not all grades were at the same time, so that if they did in the instance where it was too cold for them to go outside, they were able to utilize the hallways or utilize other spaces so that they would have the entire school building having a math break at the same time. So it was staggered by grade, but the actual math break didn't rotate throughout the day for a particular grade. It was a set part of the schedule.
So is there a way to improve that, knowing that it has that kind of negative impact on our students in multiple ways? I mean, that was a really big concern that I heard from parents. And my own child missed math every day.
So the same class is being impacted every day.
Exactly. So, and there's
Yeah, I mean,
that's a problem.
They would have to create a rotating schedule that changed every day for every grade in order for that to be accommodated.
What did the math break look like in middle school? Like why wasn't it the entire school at the same time?
Because if they're utilizing the hallways, you don't want
that's
the
what I was
entire
wondering.
school out in the hallway at the exact same time. So if it's just 6th grade during this particular period, they could utilize the hallway, especially if there were gym classes going on and the weather outside was not, you know, in a position for them to actually utilize outside. They could utilize those indoor hallways and not have it be the entire school doing it at the same time.
Well, that's actually an interesting point because, like, for example, at Fairfield Woods, the grades are organized by hallways. So when you have a whole grade have an aspect at the same time, they are in the same place.
So they might take a walk around the building. It's not that they would just stand outside in the hallway, just like Mr. Cummings said a few minutes ago, where they might take a little walk around. They might do that. It just really depended on what was going on in the building in some of those open spaces and what was going on in terms of weather outside.
Was it within the period itself? So, for example, period 3. So, at any point in period 3, that grade could go out?
Correct. And we extended period 3 for that particular grade to accommodate for the math break. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't that they had less time than the other periods. We extended and added the math break on to that particular period and staggered it by grade level.
So will that continue then? I guess that was
Yeah.
my initial question, is the extended period for math breaks will still continue this year?
In general, yes.
Schedule for-
And in general, our guidance to the administrators was, you're beginning the year in many ways like you ended it, right? So given the current conditions, things like that, the lunch schedule would be, you're going to have to start the year that same way.
So that, for middle school, sounds like something that could be put on paper and distributed to students and parents, that they could see, this is the schedule, this is the expectation, you will have the lunch break plus this additional break time, and that's something that every kid could count on and every parent could know was happening.
Right. It was posted on the website, but I don't know, and I know they did send that out in correspondence. I don't know how often it was sent out, but when we changed the schedule, every time we changed the schedule, they would send that information out to parents, but it wasn't something that was sent out on a regular basis, but I do know that it was put on the website.
Okay. And then just to clarify, because I don't want to forget about them, because I want to get back to the K to 5, for the high school, the expectation was the students were using the time in between classes for their own self-regulated math breaks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And were they expected that they could do that in the hallways? Were they expected to be stepping outside for that? How was that?
They could do it either one of those ways. They, again, and also they could ask for permission in the middle of the class to take it down for a little bit or go out in the hall for a couple of minutes.
So they could be in class with the mask down?
Briefly.
Okay.
And again, the distancing being
Right.
essential for that.
Right, because obviously we're going to have everybody in.
Right.
and of course, I guess Ludlow, this wouldn't work as well as I could say at Ward. Is there any thought of directing the traffic, especially in those inner courtyards, that passage is happening outdoors?
I don't know if they did that. I mean, I don't know if they set out to include that as part of the rotation.
I mean,
But there is, as you said, at Ward particularly, there is a lot of opportunity to go cut through that major courtyard.
I don't know, it just seems to make sense to me that that would be, like, if that became part of the traffic pattern and encouraged part of the traffic pattern, it just seems like that would make sense.
When we've been at Ward, even pre-pandemic, as long as the weather's good, kids do cut across the courtyard and use it as, as a passageway, so.
Right, I'm just thinking of my school, they were forced to. We had to move in one direction in the building, everyone was forced to do it outside. They added an extra minute of passing time to make that happen, and I'm not necessarily saying that our building Ward does not lend itself quite as well to that notion, but that idea of you will go outside, I don't know, just trying to think of changing the patterns, and as much as possible that would be the good time to do it. But so I like the idea that in middle school it's something, for the idea of avoiding board web policy, because I hear Mr. Cummings' point about the moment and just for anyone listening, the moment the board makes policies and then that becomes more binding, and therefore situations that come up where that doesn't work real well, staff will have their hand tied. So the more that we can then put in print and formalize it, I think the more comfortable parents will be and the more comfortable staff will be in terms of the expectation. So I guess I'm still back then on the elementary school, which I completely recognize is more complicated. I also recognize that I think it is much harder to take care of individual students or assume that individual students will take care of themselves and their need for a mask break. So I guess I still would love to hear, and Jen, will turn it over to you, but I'd still love to hear about something that would be more formalized in terms of an expectation, and I think this could make staff more comfortable, honestly, but a little bit less left to discretion. I hear that I'm not saying mandating 10 a.m. or what have you, but something that is more of a formal expectation.
Oh, what do we do?
Jen, go ahead.
So my first question is, what's happening during snack for this year? Is snack considered a mask break?
Depends on where it's happening, I would say. So I know some schools do it outside. It's most certainly a mask break. Some bring them to the cafeteria. That's a mask break. They're separated. I know some classrooms have done it at different times throughout the day during some of the blocks where they can separate while some groups are doing a reading lesson in the back, others are doing staff. I think that's less frequent than when they did either outdoor or larger room activities, though.
So,
are you asking if that's in place of the break or in addition to?
I'm trying to find out if snack time is considered one of those 10-minute breaks. And is that consistently in place? So, I mean, again, I think that what we're seeing universally right now is a lot of inconsistent practices, which, to your point, depending on what's going on instructionally and whatnot, is going to happen. But it is lending itself to some inequities. So the more, to Jen's point, we can formalize this in a structural manner, and the clearer it will be so that we don't cause instructional problems, but at the same time, make sure we're enforcing an equitable practice. So if snack and lunch are 2 mask breaks, that's not the case.
We built it into the schedule as snack and lunch were in there, and we didn't put a specific time for a mask break, but we put the time in for a mask last year.
Right. So they had snack, lunch.
Decided where it was.
So elementary, it was snack, lunch, plus an additional designated, at some point when it works, you will have an additional mask break.
I think the guidance was morning and afternoon and a lunch.
Right, because that's what we have in our FAQ right now, right?
That's what
like that they will have a morning, an afternoon, plus lunch. So, but then backing up to the beginning of this conversation, you said not necessarily. So, is it or isn't it? You know what I'm saying? Like, Will they or will they not?
I think the difficult thing to do is to say when you're on a regulated schedule, like middle school or high school, you can
Right.
say, you can build it into the middle school schedule and extend it.
Right.
I think in elementary, because of the fluidity of the day, to say it's always gonna be on the same time every day is, you know, if people are looking for that, I think, I don't wanna put a number on it, but I think largely that's happening, but based on things that are happening in the classroom. So if on any given day, given the elementary schedule, right, you're gonna have specials at different times of the day.
Right, of course.
So we talked about the idea that building in a mass break around the walk to art. And I remember having this conversation with the elementary principals earlier in the year, that if they're on their way to art, is it possible to go outside the building to go to art and come back in and then take a break as part of that? So when does it make most sense that it's less of an interruption to instruction, but fits more into, like, just like in an elementary class, right? Or an elementary schedule, particularly with the younger kids, you build in the classroom bathroom break at a time you're transitioning from one place to the other because you're already out in the hall.
Right.
That's how we talked about approaching it. So it should be happening morning, lunch, and in the afternoon. But the exact time is going to vary far more than middle school or high school. No, I shouldn't say far more, but it's going to have more variance than middle school.
Okay, so the message to the community is there are going to be, at the elementary level, a morning and afternoon plus lunch. Exactly what time that happens will vary.
That's good.
But there should not be a variance at the elementary level by building in terms of those being a set expectation.
No, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, James is, okay. Now, there isn't anything, my last question on this, at least for right now, is that there isn't anything on our FAQ for high school at all. So what are we doing for high school students, and are we going to be adding something to our website that specifically addresses high school students?
We can. I mean, the high school response last year was, as we talked about, you know, essentially during the passing times. And again, at all levels, the students need a specific.
Right.
We can certainly add it. I'm not aware, I've not heard of concerns at the high school level. You know, part of this is the age appropriateness of the intervention. The high school students we're expecting more behavior like adults. So if you just need to pull it away from your face for a second, you're pulling it away from your face for a second. You know, with the elementary and the middle, it's the way to make sure it happens was to build it into the schedule.
So there's no universal expectation at high school on a daily basis for a math break?
It's every passing period. That they have permission to kind of pull it away from their face, drop it down. And of course, this is back, I mean.
I'm surprised, given they're in the hallway and it's kind of crowded.
But they're moving.
And they're
again,
moving. They're not stationary.
And it's for 4-minute passing. 4-minute passing. So
Gotcha.
we had conversation with the health department early on last year about that.
Okay.
Because there was a lot of concern just with the passing being in the hall,
Mm-hmm.
but because the time is so short.
Mm-hmm. 3 times 4, 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And so I also want to talk about, I don't know, Jen, do you want to, I don't know if you have something
No, I
to
guess,
say right now.
just back, again, because I'm still more concerned about the elementary school, because again, I don't think we should be relying on those children to advocate for themselves. I don't think anyone here expects them to advocate for themselves. And would it be possible, especially if a teacher sees that passage time to a special as being when it's going to happen, is there any reason that a form letter couldn't be created that each teacher would personalize to their class to send home to parents? You know, here, they work on the 6-day cycle, correct? So that in this 6-day cycle, here is what you can expect of the day. If this is a conversation if this is a topic that is causing your child anxiety, that you can say, here, you can know that this is coming up. In addition, obviously, and I do appreciate the reminder that a student has the opportunity for an individual need to do this sort of thing. But if they know that with the way this works, that art is going to be my time to do this, with whatever vague language that says, you know, other issues being aside, or I don't see the need, I may need to add one, but at a minimum, you can count on this. Is there any reason we couldn't put that into a letter that a teacher can, again, personalize to his or her class to go to those parents?
I would, I think a communication at the elementary or building level would work better. In other words.
No, that's what that's what I mean.
Not a teacher one. I'm thinking of more like, in our building, these are the when we're gonna have the opportunities. Because it's, again, it's gonna be, I mean, I don't know, I think that's a task building principals could take on or collectively take on to put a letter together. I'm just thinking of the additional.
Well, that's what, and look, I'm not looking to put more work
No, I know
on the classroom teacher who's trying to get ready in 2.5 days to, you know, to open up to her classroom. But I guess if it was, as they look over their schedule and they say, okay, art here, that would be the good time for the morning one. I've got PE in the afternoon, that would be a good time for one. And it could be to their class. I just obviously, it's not that I want this problem to go away. It's going to be a recurring issue, but I love the idea of having some certainty. And so I worry about the building one being, of course, having to be too vague.
Well, I think it could speak in generalities. I don't know if it'd be vague. It could speak in generalities about, you know, going to specials.
Generalities is a better way to say it than vague.
And I also think there's an opportunity with open houses coming out that the parents teachers could speak to this issue. I
think that would be a great idea, you know, if they could be instructed.
And I mean, I would encourage always parents to ask this question, right? I mean, if the question on your mind, it should definitely be asked, because we know that for a number of parents, this is a great concern. And I will add too, I mean, there's going to be a responsiveness with the weather, with the need certainly greater in the warmer weather than it is in the fall and the winter.
No, I hear that. Jen?
Yes. I don't know if you have anything else on that, but I want to bring up the issue of masks outdoor at recess and PE.
Go ahead.
So right now.
Okay, so actually, let me pause you. So I would appreciate if the principals could do something just then as a communication that they can craft it. I would appreciate if the open house that could be brought up, and most specifically the specific teachers could invite that conversation with the parents. Again, I want parents to know that they're being heard in this concern, that we have heard them, that staff has heard them, and while we recognize that probably most people have been doing it in a way that has served all the kids well, maybe there needs to be a little bit of a learning curve for all of us. So, did you have anything else to add that, but actually before we jump to recess and PE?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Super fast. In addition to the importance of the communication with the parents is also having a communication with the students so that they would have an expectation and understand when those breaks are taking place. I think that's important, especially for the kids that are having anxiety around mask wearing.
Even like when teachers put the schedule up on the day, you know, or something like, so that when they walk in the morning, I guess simple things, especially for kids who do have that anxiety, they don't even need to ask. It's not like they even have to be vocal. They can just see it, you know? For the ones who can read, obviously. But, I mean, I'm just saying.
And again, I would, you know, as part of the homeschool parent communication, homeschool communication, I would encourage parents that if their child is feeling anxious about this, that they just drop a quick email to the classroom teacher once they know who that is, and say, so-and-so has got this concern, so that there's an awareness on the teacher before school even begins.
Good point.
That this child has this particular concern. Whatever, and whether it's math or something else.
Right. Of course.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so, right now, on our frequently asked questions, it says that masks are not required outdoors when 3 foot of social distance can be maintained, i.e. recess, outdoor, PE, or any other class, lunch, etc. So I've been interested in clarifying where that language came from regarding the 3 feet, because that's not what's in the Connecticut State Interim Health Guidance, nor CDC, nor in the executive order. So my first question is, where did that additional language come from?
That additional language came from when we initially took masks off going outside. There was a question about proximity. And in conversations with the health department, the reservation around taking the masks outside was, when students are clustered together on the blacktop, right? So I'll
Mhm.
give you that scenario. If they're all huddled in together and they're that close, is that the appropriate level?
We can't hear anything in that other room, so we'd like to
Coming in.
I can't remember.
I don't think it's not.
There's nothing.
So can you hear that we're speaking?
I can't hear anything. I can't hear you. Either you can come up here, and you can either come down where we are.
We can't come down where you are because we need the phone here. That's why we've been trying to do it this way.
Also, masks are.
Yeah.
I'll
Open the door,
please.
You also need masks, please?
No, I'm vaccinated.
Sorry, I missed that. What was going on?
Can you actually?
Just hold on a minute.
Yeah, great. I'd love to see the science on your mask.
We can all fit.
Yeah, we can all sit down the hall.
Look, if they want to sit out there, I don't care. But obviously, the whole point was that they should be able to hear down the hall, so that part is a problem.
How many people do we have on, how many people do we have on?
How many people were there when you were there?
Can we take a 5
Are you
minute?
guys coming down the other
Yeah,
way?
you wanna pause for 2 minutes?
Yeah, let's, can we do that? How do we get through it?
We recess for a moment?
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Make a motion to recess for.
Okay, Marco, do you know how many people are on the phone?
Yes, we have 7 people called in.
Okay.
We do have a phone in the other room, so they shouldn't be interrupted. They'll still be able to hear us, but we can't hear you guys.
Okay, first of all, if you're in here, you need to have a mask on.
Why?
That's a building
That's a
rule.
building rule.
That's the property owner.
If you're
vaccinated,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, the building,
It's not a health facility.
the building owners have
Right.
requested
You know what,
that.
guys? If you come down the hall, there's a huge amount of space.
No, ma'am.
But then we can't be heard by the people who
building
are
owner,
home.
this is a building
We don't
requirement.
have masks on, I'm sorry. We're here to protect our children and talk about why we shouldn't be wearing masks.
The building owner.
Let's go
is
down to the other
requirement.
room and all speak
Ma'am,
together.
down in the other room,
Don't
the
call me ma'am.
people, that was meant to be
Let's go down to
polite.
the other
I don't know
room,
your
please.
name, I'm calling you ma'am.
My
The
name is
people at
Sue.
home cannot hear us if we go down the other room, so we're
Yes,
trying to
they
be.
can. We have the same phone system on in the other room.
And when we spread out in the room, right here, we're all trying to
There's no
direct our
reason for us
conversation
to
out
be
there.
here to be heard.
I want you to be heard, that's why we're having in-person public comment. No, that I appreciate that feedback. That's very good to us, because we were counting that you could hear us. So I'm very sorry that you can't.
It doesn't do us any good to sit down there and not be able to hear you.
I completely agree.
We're here for this meeting.
Ma'am, you first of all need to have a mask on.
My name
So
is
I apologize, you're right, you told me your name. So you need to have a mask on.
Well, I don't have a mask.
Well, then you're not invited to be in this meeting, you're not invited to be in this building.
Yes, even Charlie can
provide you with
The pandemic's over.
Yes, we can provide you with the mask. There's a mask mandate for schools. There's a mask mandate. Well, this is a school building, and we're standing in solidarity with our students right now. This is a Board of Education.
We're standing in solidarity with our children who are the students in Fairfield. There are kids. There are kids.
I know, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we're all vaccinated.
Nothing.
I sat in this room with you, I left you my special sign, we didn't wear masks.
Well, things have changed.
Why?
The building is requiring masks.
It's
The
after
building
hours.
owner, the private,
After
it
hours.
doesn't matter, the people in the building require masks.
Well, you know what, they're not here, there's no one here.
That doesn't mean that I ignore them.
No one here, there's no one here, so they're not allowed to disrupt our meeting. And we are
Because someone told you to.
Right, we are.
Yes, ma'am, I do. I do wear a mask.
And
You
Gary,
That you're weak.
know what, ma'am? I have an 83-year-old mother.
This is not good.
87, that's why I got. How dare you? How dare you? You know nothing about me.
You don't know anything about me.
Yeah, I know, because only I tell us. Somebody told me, this is a board of education. You know what, we pay your salary, don't tell us what you're saying. And not use critical thinking.
I'm not really clear about the mask wearing, and this is not appropriate, and they don't need to be in this room.
About masks, that's why we're here. We don't want our children wearing masks.
She, zombie she.
Come down to the meeting with us, lady.
Go. I'm so jealous. Moral.
Okay, and you can take that.
Goodbye. And you know what?
Okay, don't talk.
They need to leave, it's not, you
I'm
know,
okay with
about
that. Your meeting.
These were that was extremely disruptive, and.
What's your name?
Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna come. Mike, we gotta call.
I don't know who called, I'm happy to call. They're doing this, I mean, this is.
I can't hear it downstairs.
Which is why the committee recessed.
Jen.
Which is why.
You guys should be downstairs, I'm sorry.
Which is why the committee had a recess.
You did this on purpose.
This is Jen, welcome.
Yes, you did.
She actually admitted.
Oh my God.
You don't want to deal with us.
Because people wanted a call-in option.
Then why are you downstairs? There's plenty of room for everyone.
It's just because this
This is-
room is better for those people that did not feel comfortable coming, who also want to participate.
Oh, so we're in the majority here, and we're catering to the 7 people that don't feel comfortable coming.
The town has requested call-in numbers, like, this is ridiculous.
I'm kind of calling the police.
I think we should call and just have.
I think Carol, Jane, I think James.
Okay, this is
This is not about
nobody needs this.
This is about time
It's not very pristine either.
to other members of the public.
There's a phone, there's a speakerphone down there that everybody's on.
That is not, no, we don't,
Wanted.
there's no phone in the other room, right?
There's a phone in there, but he has it set up here. I brought them. I brought them.
Yeah.
I got them from Mike.
Why can't, so just the phone that's in there, we can't use it?
Working fine.
But can we be in there and everyone here, or, like, why are we in this room?
We're here in this room because if we were in that room, we would have to have all the microphones set up, and it was my call. I said, we'll just do it here, because the audio works best for the people at home, and then I had that room for the overflow.
How would they hear us in the room? They can't, right?
Oh, because the room's so big. Got it.
Unless we like huddle next to each other.
Where's the microphone?
Everyone can hear all this.
Right, so, starting up the meeting again, first of all, we were hearing that we could not be well heard by the people here in the room, that people at home, that it was fine. So I don't know if we need to back up and review any part of what we discussed. So we had discussed, so I'll go through the 3 levels. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Did you hear us okay with our discussion about the high school level? The idea being that high school level, that again, this is mask break policy solely, or the discussion of mask breaks. That the high school, the expectation is that is done during passing time, unless the student needs something of a brief nature within class, that was the high school. At the middle school, we talked about that there is an expectation, and this is a schedule that will be published. Dr. Parrish, if I mischaracterize this, please correct me, that the middle school will have a published schedule where there is additional time added to certain blocks, where by grade, they will have mask breaks, which are generally happening in the hallways that they can take it off and walk, correct?
Or external to the building.
Or external to the building, right. And then where most of our discussion was focused was on elementary school. And that the notion that while there had been a published expectation, that there's a general perception that was not always consistently followed, which again, with any new policy, I think it's fair that happens, that some people follow it some way and others another, and that we were trying to get around to what could be a more consistent expectation, and that one of the things that we had discussed would be that each building administrator would publish something at the start of the year to parents, just to make clear that there's that morning, lunch, and afternoon expectation of a mask break outside where possible, that there can be individual circumstances where a child needs something additionally, that again, this would be something published to parents, and then we also requested that individual teachers be asked explicitly to address this during open house night, which is helpful not only to repeat what maybe parents know, but also to open that line of communication. Here's the person you speak with if your child isn't experiencing it the way that the teacher perceives it being experienced, and then that would be how to address it. And we had kind of wrapped that up, and we were moving on to the specific mask use and mask breaks associated with PE and recess. Does that sound like hopefully most of you caught most of that? And so Mrs. Jacobson was asking Mr. Cummings about the difference between what Fairfield had initially rolled out back when masks were first allowed to be removed for outdoor recess, and comparing now the current guidelines with what will be happening at recess when compared with the State Department of Health. So I don't know, Mrs. Jacobson, if you want to repeat any of that, if I didn't completely characterize it, or if Mr. Cummings, if you want to just pick right up with what are the plans for this year.
I will. I just got a text from Mr. today. Yeah, he's all set. I just want to make sure that he was online. So yes, the question was around, why we were asking for masks at 3 feet or less outside. And that goes back to, the spring when the guidance was lifted on masks outside, except in close quarters, when students were huddled around, together on a playscape, something like that. In conversations with the health department, and it started with feedback from our building administrators, who were hearing from the teachers, well, how exactly do we define that? So essentially, in working with the health department, we came to an agreement that the 3-foot rule that is inside would be the 3-foot rule outside, because the teachers were looking for something measurable. If you're working with young students, and you're trying to give them clear direction on when they should put the mask on or take the mask off, the 3-foot was consistent with what the expectation was everywhere else. You should put the mask on when you're close to 3 feet. And that's carried us through the spring. When the new DPH guidance came out, or the revisions came out this summer, and I go back to the conversation that we had, the webinar, beginning of August, that question came up again. Mr. Cleary from the health department again talked about the idea of the 3-foot being an appropriate time when students would put on a mask. I know that question has since come up again, and I was meeting with building administrators today, raised the question again with the elementary principals. Do you feel that you need that number to help teachers set expectations for when students should put on the mask? And they said that they do. So that's essentially why we have it, because I think as we're interpreting this, outside is a mitigation strategy until, and this is my understanding from the health guidance, being outside is a mitigation strategy until students are that close together and sharing breathing space, I suppose, and that's when they should have the mask on.
I'm happy to talk, but you were the one who raised the question.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation of how we got here. I appreciate that. So a couple things on that. Currently, in the executive order or in the Connecticut Department of Public Health, that's not a recommendation. This is simply the health Sans Cleary saying that's what we should do at Fairfield.
Well, that's, again, his statement is in response to guidance requests from our staff.
Okay. So I clarified a few things just with Jill and with you in the last few days. I had a couple of questions on this in terms of, is this consistent off of school property? There is no current Fairfield town-wide 3-foot outdoor mask mandate. There's not an indoor mask mandate. Yesterday, I wish somebody was here, but yesterday it was stated at the Board of Selectmen's meeting that there is not a situation in Fairfield where he feels that we need to have an indoor mask mandate in Fairfield. We already have a universal masking policy mandate from the executive order in all of our buildings already, so we're already way more restrictive in terms of our buildings than what the rest of Fairfield is at this point. And so my issue with this is that it doesn't help with contact tracing because outdoors is 6 foot, it's not the 3 feet. So it doesn't get you out of quarantine in terms of implementing this. And it's inconsistent with the practices for the rest of the town. And so if kids can step off property and go to the beach and go to the playground and go to sports and go to wherever downtown, walk around downtown, then we are literally implementing this mask rule for outdoors for elementary children on 11 pieces of property of the whole town. That is not a state requirement, that is not a town requirement, that is not a Connecticut DPH requirement. So while I understand we're under a universal indoor mask requirement, and right now, I totally understand that, I'm struggling with us inserting, straying from the guidance. Because I do also feel that once you stray, you insert debate, right? You either way, either for less or for more, or what you insert the debate. If you just say, we're gonna just do what it says. And what it says is, you don't have to wear a mask outdoors at recess. And so I mean, that is that is for the board, for this committee, for us to decide, but I just don't understand how the health department can have a different rule or for our 11 buildings than every other property in town.
Well, and I think also that we have taken issue with our doing almost anything that is stricter than what is already coming down from the Department of Health. And that 3 feet is a moving target, in and out, in and out. That got interpreted by some principals to say, and maybe even with good reason, these kids are always going to be 3 feet apart. Therefore, every single one of these kids has to keep the mask on. And that was happening at some of our elementary schools. And right now, the guidance from the State Department of Health, which we have been invoking for 18 months, is at recess, no mask. I think that is what we want to see happening in Fairfield Elementary Schools. And Carol?
I just wanted to add to that, the fact that we're, I think, planning on having.
Carol, you might need to be louder.
The high school and middle school sports are planned to be played unmasked outside, and certainly there will be kids playing sports 3 feet apart. So it's just not consistent even with what we're doing across the district, the way that I'm seeing it.
Now, I understand that for high school sports, they are eligible to be vaccinated. However, they are not all vaccinated, and they are still not required to wear a mask. So again, it's like these different, we talked about this last year, and even the board advocated to the state level to say, can we please just have consistent rules? Like consistent rules that don't make our schools into some more restricted place than everywhere else. Understood the indoors, totally understand that that is what we have to do. But outdoors, I mean, they're just going out to do things after school anyway, and then coming into the building anyway. So to say, well, we want to have that extra layer of protection during recess, but you're not really, because it doesn't matter, because they're still coming into school.
Well, I do have to leave, as I told members of the policy, I have to leave now, but
Right.
This is what I'm going to say. And recognizing everything you understand, and I'd be glad to go back and talk to Mr. Cleary about this. But ultimately, the school system has the responsibility, COVID or no COVID, to require safety measures that may not be applicable in other settings in town and at 340 at the elementary school. You know, we have stricter rules around how people behave at the playground than they do once they're out of school. So again, as we've done from the beginning, we've taken our advice and direction from the health department. I will go back and talk to Mr. Cleary about this. But he was clear at the parent webinar. And if they've changed their opinion on that, we'll change our guidance. But again, I want to go back to the initial concern. The teachers were looking for something specific in which they could direct the students.
Right.
And because when the students are huddled together on the playground, there can often be face-to-face. And that's where the concern arose. So.
I understand that. I appreciate your input. And if that was the case, then you would think that the governor would have put it in his executive order, or the State Department of Health would have put it in their guidance.
Well, maybe the State Department of Health. I don't know how receptive.
A lot of towns.
I'll make an editorial statement. I don't know how receptive a lot of adults making this decision are understanding of the specific circumstances of an elementary school.
Oh, I think we know they're not.
But I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I do have to.
I know, I'll just say this though, the last thing is that a lot of districts last year and this year use recess as a math break.
Yeah, and we do too.
I'll just say one last thing.
I mean, we do encourage kids to get up and
Yeah.
get away from each other.
Right.
But,
But see, that's not appropriate though, so, I mean, we want kids to be able to play together.
Well, we want them running around, that's what recess should be about.
Well, it should be, okay, so, I know you have to leave, I understand, but this is, you know.
okay, so we're gonna leave this, because one thing I will remind is that in our policy 19.2, that the board directs the administration to develop health and safety protocols consistent with applicable laws, rules, regulations, requirements, and considering current guidance, and the current guidance is no masks at recess.
Right.
And so, thank you for saying that you will go back to Mr. Cleary with this point, because I would appreciate our strong interest in having no masks, period. And I understand teachers are looking for guidance. They want to do this right. Well, I think the easier guidance.
You know that they're coming from a place of where
Of
they
course.
believe is keeping the kids safe.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, so on the topic, was there anything else about PE you wanted to say? Jen?
Huh?
Was there anything?
No.
Anything about PE that you wanted to add, because you had said recess and PE?
Well, just what's on our FAQ, Jen, it would be applicable, we could, you know, right now what's on our website is that it says PE, recess, if you're teaching your class outdoors, you know, any type of, something like that. So right now on the website, it says kind of anything outdoors. I mean, I'm perfectly happy to narrow that to
Okay.
PE and recess and say, hey, you're taking your class outdoors, let them sit 3 feet apart. You know what I'm saying? But,
Okay, and I will follow up on this also.
okay.
And,
I mean, Carol, do you have anything to say on this?
I just couldn't agree more. I think it's important that we're.
yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I'm yelling, sorry. I just think it's so important that we're being consistent in the way that we're following these rules. And, hopefully we see an outcome that makes sense after hearing from.
You're still pretty soft.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
You agree?
I agree.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the COVID policies, which actually was the reason for this meeting. These we have to get through before we can get to public comment. These are what are the source of next Tuesday's special meeting for the board, which I believe is going to be virtual. Ms. Vitale? Do you know next Tuesday, or you're not sure yet? Okay, all right, so, so these policies that we do need to go through, again, remember that we're not the final voice on this, that policy works through them, votes them out of committee, and then it's the full board that votes on them. So that first page, which again, thank you to Ms. Deasy for putting together the COVID policy recommendations page. So just as a summary of what we're looking for, and just figure we'll go through in order. So policy 19.1 is the policy that covers the extent of them. This is what is covered by the current governor's executive order. So it involves the date change, extending it to September 30th with an expiration effective October 1st. Anything that needs to be added to that?
I don't think so. I think regardless of what we decide to do, we will want to discuss this at the September policy.
Okay. Jen?
I have a point to make between C19.1 and C19.2 and an inconsistency in the language, and I don't know if it's bothersome to anyone else, but I like things to be consistent. So if you look at the second paragraph, Jen,
Yep.
where you're talking about, where's that part about the adherence thing?
I don't see the word adherence.
Okay, so, second paragraph,
Of 19.2.
19.1.
19.1.
Okay. So, board policies and administrative regulations, and to enact or authorize board policy and administrative regulations on new topics to the extent appropriate, et cetera, required by applicable law, rules, and guidance, right? So we use laws, rules, and guidance here. But in 19.2, it says the board, first paragraph, second sentence, the board thus directs the administration of the Fairfield Public Schools to develop health and safety protocols consistent with applicable laws, rules, regulations, and requirements, and to consider current guidance. So, to me, point 1 and point 2 are not consistent with each other. So either way, I mean, whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yep,
Whatever
no,
the-
I see.
Whatever the right way is the right way. I just rather, one says, you know, something different than the other. So, adhere to all applicable laws, rules, and guidance. Then point 2 says consider guidance. So we should rectify point 1 and point 2 for the appropriate language, whichever language is the right one.
So first, I'll defer to Mrs. Deasy if there's an issue there, because actually, I'm taking a look at the idea of adhering to guidance as even being potentially problematic, since we promptly aren't. Do you have any issue with one over the other? No. Okay.
Oh, I mean, depends on how you look at it.
Depends on how you look at what?
The guidance piece.
I mean, to add consider?
Well, one says adhere to, one says consider.
I like consider. Well, the 19.2 has consider guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And just to everybody in the audience, this is actually really the nature of policy work. It's these words here and there, so sorry where this gets a little dry. I would have no problem with 19.1 changing adhere to consider and including all 4, or actually 5. Laws, rules, regulations, requirements, and guidance. Is that what you're looking for?
I'm just raising the,
Well, you can't just raise. You have to, you know.
okay, what did you say again? The board?
So that from 19.2, you have there in a string, laws, rules, regulations, requirements, followed by guidance. And to take the 5 of them,
And insert them into point 1.
point 2.
No, point 1.
No, into point 1, sorry, point 2, in that second paragraph. And changing it
Yes.
here to consider.
Yes, so you're suggesting that we take the language from point 2, insert it into point 2 of point 1, so that it is consistent. Okay, so that is a change, that's a substantial change to point 1, just want to point that out. We're taking out adhere, and we are putting in consider.
Yep. Once again, Ms. Deasy, any issues with that?
No,
Carol, yes?
I agree. I think it's a great, change.
After guidance, you're not changing anything, right? 'Cause you're
We're adding. So on 19.1, point 2 would be consider all applicable laws, let's do it in order, laws, rules, regulations, requirements, and guidance. Actually, I should be directing this to Kristen, right?
Yeah.
Always let us know if we've done anything too fast or mumbled. Okay. So rules, regulations, what did I miss? Rules,
So you're moving the consider to the front
yes.
for 19.1, so this is, it's just before guidance in 19.2.
That's correct.
Okay.
And again, knowing if something comes up between now and next Tuesday that makes us inadvisable, we can bring it up before the full
Okay.
board.
So,
So number 2 of 19.1 will now say, consider all applicable laws, rules, regulations, requirements, and guidance.
and applicable guidance?
Well, I thought applicable covered all of them.
No.
So applicable is in front. Consider all,
Current guidance?
say it again?
I think current guidance, that's what's in 2. You want just guidance?
Correct, because applicable is already listed.
Okay. Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Rio? I don't know if we should vote them individually or together, but let's do it individually. Okay, so 19.1 otherwise all set?
For me, yeah.
19.2?
Yeah.
All set, Carol?
Yep, good.
Okay, so 19.3, of course, looking to be repealed. Ms. Deasy, just as a question, are we going to keep these with, so that 19.3 on the website would be blank? We're not going to bump them up so that we keep the same numbers?
I would not renumber anything.
I agree. Okay, so 19.3 gone. 19.4, this one relevant to the green cleaning program. Yeah, I didn't either. The one thing I'm hoping, Mr. Angelos, I don't know if you could speak to this, is this something that you see that where you think we're going to have any latitude to continue this post-COVID? This change on page C of 19.4?
I can answer that. We do, legally, we have the same, abilities now that we did.
So that it would not be
It
allowed?
would continue, this could be a permanent change if the board had an appetite for that.
Because this is one of the ones I was always waiting, expecting a recommendation that we might want to consider. So you think that is possible?
It is possible.
Okay, just wondering. I just want to keep notes. Any issues with 19.4? No? No? Okay, 3.0 on that one. Yeah, that's how we vote. 19.5, turn the page too much. So the community use of school facilities. And the important part of this wording, I should say, is the idea that the superintendent may limit or restrict. At a past meeting, we've already had a discussion about this policy, and it is highly likely that much of this is being lifted. We're already having the school facilities in use by other groups. So already this is not as strict. This is simply to provide the latitude where needed. But any issues with the language? Jen?
I was interested to see that this wasn't one that was being repealed, because I know in June we had talked about that this would be something that we were looking to remove. But if we're going to keep this in place, I think that this is another one of the policies that are being implemented by building in an inconsistent and unfair manner.
In terms of after-school activities?
In terms of just anything, in terms of any activities, in terms of during school hours or after, not after school hours, I mean, I don't know about after school hours, but just in terms of, well, one school is doing X, but the other school won't let them, or what have you. So, I think.
Can I quick follow up on that?
Sure.
Isn't that decided by central office? Isn't that part of the reservation system? That's not a building administrator.
This is specifically about community use, yes, which is a central office function. Buildings have first priority. Angela can speak to this better than I can, but buildings have first priority in terms of preserving the space.
Right.
So if someone was using the school someone wanted to use the gym, and it was, a night where we had basketball practice, then the school-based basketball practice would win out over the community group who wanted to use the gym. So
Right.
The schools have preference, but it is a central office decision.
Right, so I'm not clear on what the inconsistency is that you're.
I'm talking about like things like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, having different events at schools, PTA meetings, PTA events that were being allowed at some places but not others. So if we're going to keep this policy, then I would like to insert some consistency by building level language and make it so that it is
Consistent.
Yeah, so that it is consistent, but consistent in terms of allowable, not consistent in terms of denial.
Carol?
I have very similar concerns. I just have heard so many examples of different kinds of after-school activities. I'll leave it at that because it's broad. It even includes activities that are school activities that are not taking place in person, instead are taking virtually, which is not the direction that I think we need to see us going now. So that doesn't really fit into this policy because it's community use.
Right.
But as we're having this discussion, I think it's really relevant because we're...
Or we should define community use. Does that mean non-parent group, non-student-based group use? Because if that's what we mean in this policy, then we should insert that language into the policy so that it does not apply to parent/student use.
I'd like to see that language as well, because we have so many school activities that PTAs tried to pull off last spring that weren't able to happen.
In some places.
In some places and not in others because of this policy, or maybe not.
No.
I don't know, not really.
No.
That's a separate issue.
Yeah.
All right, so we don't,
So an equitable clause,
So where are you looking to put that?
okay, I mean, for example, we could, do something akin to, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the superintendent may limit or restrict the use of school facilities by, non-student, non-parent / guardian groups based on the guidance of federal, state, blah, 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 applicable law, period, insert new sentence. Such limitations or restrictions shall be implemented consistently by level.
All right, the first change I would not be in favor of because of the first paragraph below, school buildings and grounds shall be open for use by the public. And first of all, they could very well be parents, but it's still a community use because it's not a PTA use. So I feel no need to further define community and other groups, but I have no problem with saying we want that idea, but again, I guess I'm just lacking examples. I understand the idea that schools were doing it differently for schools and that is an issue, and I am sensitive to that issue, but community group use,
I mean,
I haven't heard of examples of this.
so I would be interested in just cutting this entire paragraph out and just inserting the DPH guidance that any non-essential community use of school buildings is to be for before or after school purposes, and then during school hours is at the discretion of the superintendent, because that's what the DPH guidance says right now.
And, I'm sorry, Jen, there were examples of it in the spring where, if a PTA is considered a community use, if they were trying to have programs for the students, those were not allowed.
I swear that's a different policy.
Well, we have visitors.
Yeah.
I don't know if PTA is falling under this.
Right, I'm not sure either.
I'm just, it's confusing to have two of these policies. One's community groups and one's visitors. Visitors is like a single person or a group of single persons. So does that then become a community use?
No, that's
Community use is more like the church groups, like the church services.
That's why I was interested in defining it specifically in this policy to be non-student.
But the visitors are defined in the visitor policy.
Right, and parents and guardians are not included in that definition.
I mean, technically, the PTAs are 501c3 the same way that these other community groups could be. So it's hard to differentiate that, even though we treat it differently in terms of the reservation system, right?
So that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Still waiting for language, though.
I gave you my suggestion.
You really didn't.
I did, non-student.
Okay, I already said I wasn't in favor of that.
Okay, but you asked me for language.
No, what is the language you want regarding the consistency?
Oh, the consistency language, that the superintendent shall implement this policy consistently by level. Understood that there are differences between elementary, middle, and high school in terms of what happens. Or forget all that and just copy and paste the DPH.
And can you read that?
I can. Give me a second. You're gonna have to leave me a minute. I am checking on my phone for the guidance, just hang on.
Yeah, I'm not finding it.
On the interim guidance,
No, I'm looking for the policy, because I swore there was something separate.
there's a visitor's policy.
Yeah, I know, and I've got the school volunteers policy, school community associations.
Okay. Here we go. So for non-essential, so DPH doesn't even actually have a community group. It's guidance at all at this point. It just says for visitors, review and communicate the rules for visitors and family engagement activities. All visitors should be aware of and comply with the mitigation strategies in use inside the school building. Recommend that non-essential visitors / meetings with outside individuals occur after the school day ends. Essential provider visits should continue without restriction.
Yeah, that's really more 19.6 and 7.
Yeah. So there really isn't any community.
So would you be happy with, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the superintendent may limit or restrict the use of school facilities by community and other groups in a consistent manner based on the guidance of federal, state, and local health authorities?
Yeah, I think that works.
By level. We don't necessarily want the same thing for elementary that we want for a high school. I'd prefer to just get rid of this policy, but that's just me. I don't.
Look, increasingly, I don't think this has been invoked, but, all right, so hold on. So, again.
I would hope that we would see at this point wanting our buildings to be in use.
They are in use.
Well, last year, that was not the case at certain locations.
So, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the superintendent may limit or restrict the use of school facilities by community and other groups in a consistent manner by level based on the guidance of federal, state, and local health authorities. Yes?
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Any problems with that, Mrs. Deasy, that you anticipate? Okay. Rio?
Yep.
And again, if you guys want to further consider the idea of eliminating this or not, my suggestion is simply prepare that for next Tuesday. I'm thinking alert the board in a don't invite a conversation email, but to say you are considering advocating for this to be eliminated. I also wouldn't like doing that right now without Mr. Cummings having a chance to weigh in, but absolutely consider doing that for next time.
I have one more change on that.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Citation down here is the adapted ACTs.
Yeah.
June 29, 2020. So if we're keeping that as a reference, that would be conflictual with the interim guidance. So either we take it out or we follow it, right?
So for the citations, what would we?
You can just remove it.
So we just need it updated.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever's accurate. Like, I mean, I don't know if you're going to put the interim or nothing or whatever.
It doesn't need to be anything. It could be, I mean, that language could be a permanent change, essentially saying the superintendent has the ability to limit it.
Permanent change?
Permanent, that was, I mean, it's a possibility.
If we voted this into policy, right now this expires October 1st.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't want to do that right now.
Right.
But I would take out the advanced achieve if we're not following the AAA document right now, which it sounds like we're not, then we should take it out, right?
That's fine. I don't think we need another citation, was I think all I was trying to say.
Okay.
All right. So 19.6, visits to school, as well as the administrative regs, which again, we don't vote on the administrative regs, but it's just
Right.
to apprise of the language that's there. Actually, the one restriction I would make, doesn't it make sense to change the board to the district?
Yes. Yeah. Or the superintendent to be consistent. Otherwise, we got to go back to the other one and change it to the district. We're telling the person who's ultimately responsible for these is the superintendent.
Okay. Do you see that, Kristen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually just have a question about the health screening protocols. Are those in place right now? Is that something that we were doing this summer? And
I think the checklist is something.
so that's still.
We've been asking people to self-monitor, so that if you're sick or have symptoms, you don't come to this building.
I don't have a problem with that. I'm not sure if that's being communicated, but. Okay.
Second thing is to take out the citation again.
Yep.
And then I would also like to insert the equity language in here that we put in the other one.
Yep. So after the superintendent may limit or restrict visitors in a consistent manner by level based on the guidance of. Yes?
Yes, et cetera, with in a consistent manner by level, that same sentence.
Got it, Kristen? Okay. Is that one all right? Carol?
I'm just trying to decide if that's necessary. Do we need to? Yeah, that's good.
Well, I like the idea that it's
Yeah.
not one elementary school can't have one rule and the other another. We shouldn't be doing PPTs one way at one school and differently at another and what have you,
Or
so.
parents coming in, you know, I just want this to be interpreted by Mike in the way that in which these changes are being put forth, and that the intent of this is to get back to engagement with our families on
Yeah.
this campus. It is not to say, okay, so now nobody can do it.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, that's how I'm putting them forward.
Good. Okay. So yes, okay, Jen?
Yes.
Okay, 3-0. All right, so, was there, Ms. Deasy, for the AR, is it just that you're showing us the language, or was there anything you wanted to alert us to with that?
All the COVID-19 language is what's highlighted.
Yeah.
I included this only as information.
Okay.
There are no suggestions.
Okay. All right, so 19.7, volunteers and resource persons. And interesting, and this one's back to the superintendent, so
Right.
I'm not, and we missed it, so,
In one we had
Yep.
three different things at three different points.
yep.
That's, I'm very,
So-
it's very unusual.
Make the same addition here after limit or restrict volunteers.
I would
So-
recommend it, yeah.
Same addition. And again, when at next Tuesday's meeting, I'll certainly articulate to the full board that our wish that this is getting opened up and that there are more reasons that parents are being allowed or other volunteers or resource people, but that this is in the event that any restriction is needed
Yeah.
or warranted.
Great.
Okay?
Yep.
Anything else? Look good?
Do you
Okay.
want to remove the citation?
Yeah. Okay, 3-0 on that. Oh my God. I just want to look at all the legal reference, all the votes on this one. That's it? Only 5? Six, I'm looking at, on the last page of just how many times we have adopted and revised this. So, before we get into this one, Ms. Deasy, have you heard anything regarding what more we might, is there anything else cooking on the burner that we might be looking at this again in 2 months?
In terms of remote learning,
Yeah.
well, we were supposed to get more guidance last Friday, and we still haven't gotten it. The state was supposed to release it to everyone, not just us
Yeah.
especially, so.
What's the rush?
Yeah, it could come imminently. I don't know what it's going to contain, so there could be something, but as of right now, there's not anything.
So,
No, so obviously you can see the changes that are in here. Not planning on entire remote learning days. I'm not sure who's the person to ask this to. This is really a question for Mike. But Dr. Parrish, I'll ask you to speak to this. Since I believe there's still discussion on what we are going to be doing with quarantined students, do you see that we might need this language that's crossed off? Is that something that could be reviewed one more time before next Tuesday?
No, because currently the state is counting those days as absences. So we're not able to go remote.
Oh, I was going to ask, I had brought up the last time we were wrestling this one, the idea of adding a no-fault absence. Is that something that, again, I know it's a busy summer,
No, I
but,
haven't heard anything about that. I just do know that, in terms of like a district-wide remote day, counting as a day of school, that is not an option.
yeah.
So that's why we put in I, because if we had a remote day, for example, the ones that we had called due to weather, but we still had school remotely district-wide, we wanted to make sure that those that had lost power as a result of the weather,
Right.
were
And I guess quarantine covers what I was thinking anyway, so, questions?
I'm just discouraged by, the lack of plans for quarantine. I'm just voicing my general concern for that, what we're doing with those students, and, that, again, is outside of this policy, so.
Jen?
Oh, sorry. Okay, so my first question on this is, since the State Board of Education did not meet to change the definition of absence and unexcused absence as they were supposed to do by July 1st, how can we include quarantine as an excused absence? Since it is not currently defined as such, and they did not do anything about it.
So you're asking what is our authority in doing it?
Yes.
Legally, I don't know that there's an explicit authority, but I think if we're directing students not to come to school and that direction is coming from the school, we're in a difficult position to have it also be an unexcused absence.
Okay, so we're just gonna take the authority to include it as an unexcused absence.
Until we're told otherwise.
Okay. Right, I mean, I want it in there,
Yeah.
obviously. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that that's not.
As of right now, there's
Like,
not
a
really
thing right now.
explicit guidance either way, so without that explicit guidance either way, this was the decision that we made as a suggestion.
Okay, got it, okay. Okay. Da. So since last year, we put in this paragraph on the back of, I don't know, the one about the whole,
Page C?
yes, the one about that they are encouraged to participate from home, that they will be marked absent from class. That's for non-COVID related reasons.
Oh, geez,
So the absence will be excused if a parent guardian notifies the school of the absent line, otherwise the absence will be excused. So,
I skipped right over that. Thank you.
So, that's great. I mean, you know, however, situations have changed at this point, and we were encouraged to develop a policy on a narrow scope of remote learning. So what are this committee going to suggest that we do on that?
Right, so I have two suggestions that I apologize for making these on the fly. In the first paragraph, the sentence that starts with additionally should be struck.
Wait, what
Where are
page?
you?
Sorry, C,
So the,
first highlighted paragraph.
additionally, the parent guardian must notify the school's absentee line. That sentence struck.
And the second is that if a student is and the bottom part, sorry again, if a student is unable to attend class in person for COVID-19 related reasons. And I would,
Take out the non.
right, such as a quarantine or being sick with COVID-19, having tested positive.
Okay, but this idea of they are encouraged to participate from home, right now, we have not said publicly that that is an option.
Well, to the extent possible. There's not going to be a synchronous instruction necessarily, but there might, if there is a synchronous instruction that they can log into, they're invited to do so.
So it would be maybe accessing the resources in Google Classroom, but not remoting in like we had previously had students.
But that was a topic I thought that was still in discussion.
What exactly it looks like is still in discussion.
Right.
Well, we should probably give some direction on what we think it should look like.
That is a monster topic. And I'm not saying monster in a good or a bad way. I'm saying that this is huge. And the whole idea, but they will be marked absent from class, obviously would be if it were asynchronous. But the idea that there may be a change in that and that we are going to have students remoting in if they are in a 10-day quarantine, or even that that is still being discussed, this paragraph is a very big deal.
In terms of participation?
In terms of it even being in the policy
Okay.
at all. And I guess I would have no problem approving this right now, knowing that I would need Mike to know that next Tuesday, I couldn't advise the board to approve this policy unless a statement's been definitively determined by staff on what direction we are taking with that. And I don't think that's one we want to make up on the fly right now. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You guys get where I'm going?
I agree.
So I don't want to hold this policy up. We have to have absences defined. But this paragraph, again, is a very big deal and how it's going to be interpreted. Yep. And implemented. So I'll follow up with Mike also, but obviously I'll leave that to you to follow up with him as well, that we're going to need a decision on that.
Express how we feel about what we think should happen?
You're welcome to. I think it really needs to be directed to Mike.
Okay.
But if you'd like, I'm not going to censor you.
Yeah. Okay, so my sentiment on this is, given the interim guidance on remote learning, that we were encouraged to create a policy with a very narrow scope, including for children who are in quarantine, is something that I think is incredibly important that we do, considering it's in 7 days out of school, and that they should have the option to live stream into their classrooms if they want to, because that is a very isolating experience that could happen multiple times during the school year. Elementary, middle, high school, also different reasons there from isolation and sending healthy kids home. And I just feel like if we're going to send healthy kids home when we don't really have any data around all of that, they should have access to their teachers and their peers.
Carol?
I agree with everything that Jen said. I sort of started off by saying how concerned I am about quarantine, and it's just weighing very heavily on me, and I don't feel like we have a good handle on that right now.
I mean, I'm very happy to see that the quarantine rules have radically changed. So we should not be looking at anything like the quarantine numbers that we had last year, but that doesn't mean they're going to be non-existent. So if you guys are okay with, was there anything else? So given that one sentence is struck, and I apologize, Ms. Beasley, I already forget, what did you say for this paragraph at the bottom? Just simply crossing off non.
Yes.
I'm okay with approving this right now, but we're going to need to have the discussion about this paragraph, which I'm sure we would want to do by next Tuesday anyway.
Would you be more comfortable striking the paragraph?
I think we have to address the topic of the paragraph. If it ends up that we're going to do it synchronous and it's a live remote in, then we need that defined as a present in school sort of thing. I mean,
We can't. The state guidance says it's still an absence.
Right.
That much is clear, but it's.
but they opened us up to creating the policy, and the policy did not, and regarding the state board that hasn't even met.
They did release guidance on remote learning specifically, and that says that any remote learning day can't count as a state.
Even with the short term, I know the long term it couldn't.
The schools are encouraged to develop a plan to benefit students, so that students who are in quarantine don't fall behind, but they're still absent.
I'm guessing that's going to change, but yeah.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's going to change.
So hopefully we'll know more. So that's kind of what I was getting at when I said, are we anticipating anything else coming out? Because again, you know, what's the rush? But, okay, so you guys okay with voting this out? So we'll vote it out 3-0, but with a conversation needed on that. And I will follow up with Mike as well.
And you want to change those citations again, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I just want them accurate.
Yep.
Okay, 19.9, transportation.
I have something on this one.
Go ahead.
It seemed really silly to me, but if you go to, whoa, God, this is a long one. Where is it? A long policy.
19.9?
9.
It also has the regs attached, so. right, so first, just while you're finding it, I will point out that the language in red is a change, that the previous 19.9 COVID policy had said courtesy rides are gone. And as we announced in June, that the district is bringing those back on the space available basis. So that's a very nice thing to bring back. Jen?
I have a question on B. So that, on that
On what?
On B, right where you are.
Yep,
Okay? So not the red, but the next highlighted paragraph.
yep.
That says, okay, the board will request that parents volunteer to transport eligible students without reimbursement in order to reduce the number of students transported on buses to protect the health and safety of students and staff. But yet then above that, we're saying, but we want to put on courtesy rides. So why would we have a policy that says we're going to ask our eligible bus kids to drive, but we're going to put courtesy riders on the bus? Either you want to reduce the bus capacity or you don't.
Here's the part where I don't see that as conflict, is that, because I agree with you, if our goal is to get the numbers down, we get the numbers down, but there is such a thing as a half-empty bus, and that there is, in fact, space. I don't think courtesy rides is going to fill a bus, and I would hope that wouldn't be the direction of the district on that. I don't know if, would Angela be the one to speak to this?
Do we need the second paragraph still? Like, are we still encouraging parents to drive who are eligible for the bus to drive?
Good question.
That was
I
my
mean,
question,
because if we can put more kids on the bus to have courtesy riders who are not eligible for the bus, then we should probably tell our eligible parents, you don't have to drive anymore, unless you want to.
I hear your point. Again, I had just heard, it's one thing if you're reducing by virtue of this, a bus of 55 down to 50, I don't think we're then going to say 5 courtesy riders can come on. But if you have a bus that has 30, you could take some additional on.
I think we have to rectify this paragraph.
I think the second one has to go. I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding, I haven't heard the health department talking about convincing parents to drive. I'm hearing that a lot of people are sending their kids on the bus next year. I mean, there's a change, so I don't have.
To be clear, everyone can drive if they want to drive.
Yeah.
No, right.
Right, but
We're
this
not, I mean, if we're
message
taking the courtesy riders, we should say you get, take the bus if you want. Right?
I'm just explaining how I had read it. So I don't have a strong preference if you guys want to get rid, well, first of all, was the district planning to do this? I don't know if Angelus or if, who would know this?
Angela, do you know? Transportation.
What, was the district planning to ask parents to voluntarily drive, thereby alleviating some of the numbers? Okay.
Do you want to leave it in for now, because Mike's not here and we don't have an answer, and then we can deal with it next week? I just feel like those two sentences. Really.
No, I get your point. I'm wondering more if we should take it out and we can add it back.
I prefer to do that. I'd rather vote on it with it deleted.
Okay,
But
so that the board has a sense of our position. Okay.
Okay, so we're looking to strike that paragraph if, again, another conversation that might happen in the next week, if there is a situation where you say, well, no, well, here's why we're thinking we would still like to do that, we can always add it back, but otherwise, makes sense. Okay? All right, so taking that out, you guys all right now?
Yeah.
Rio, done?
Yeah.
And, skipping over to AR. 19.10. And this one was no change, right? Yeah. Wait, I had one question about this. At this point in time, on page F, lunches in classrooms, that ended up, I understand keeping the language as an option, but am I correct that ended up not happening at all? We did it for the flexibility, but the principals ended up working the space, so we did not need that. Correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Is lunch going to function just the same as it did last year?
In the spring, yeah.
Pardon me?
In terms of that was the barriers, but with the 3 feet of distance minimum.
But they're not going to have those
Alternate spaces.
barriers around them anymore?
No, they'll be available for students if they so choose that they want to utilize them, but they're not something that we plan to have mask use of barriers. They'll just be there for those that may feel more comfortable with using them.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to.
Okay. Carol, anything?
Nope.
Okay, nothing else?
No.
All right, 3-0 on that?
Yeah.
Okay, and then 19.11, oops, wrong page. So this one, repealed.
You're appealing that one.
Yep. Correct, that is the recommendation?
Yep, we no longer have, the authority to do this.
Okay. So, we don't have to vote on that, do we?
We have to vote to repeal it.
We do,
Vote, yeah.
because it's part of the whole collection.
Yep.
No issues, I assume? No.
I mean, some of this may come back, Jen, so,
Yeah.
I know, I hear you, I'm
When are we
just
gonna
saying.
hear, though? I mean, the timing on this is just terrible. From the-
Yeah.
Please,
You really want to get Jen started?
I know.
Okay, so at this point, those are the C-19 policies that will go to next Tuesday for a vote, knowing that some conversation, and again, you may want to contemplate your own ideas on 19.3. At this point, for future items, again, we're looking at booster clubs in October, grading policy, mic update at the end of September with committee members coming back in October, and again, that's for middle school and high school. And for anyone in the public who's wondering what the current policy says, there is not one. That's why this is so time-consuming, is we are creating a grading policy, which we have never, as in a Board of Ed policy, which we have never had. Graduation requirements.
Yeah, why is that on here?
I don't know.
I looked at that too, and I was like,
Do you remember why that's on there?
Is that what it is?
Are they changing something on us again?
No, but they were just wanting to talk about.
But that might.
Requirement, yeah.
You know what that took, right? Yeah, just
That
saying.
wasn't in law pad.
But how we fulfill it?
How we fulfill.
Oh, how we fulfill it.
Okay.
So we'll get an update on that?
didn't we
What
put
was-
that in the policy, how you can meet that? Oh, you want
Right,
to
so
change that?
Yeah.
For the class of 2023, there's concerns because of.
When, do you know when,
that needed to be done.
Understood, okay.
do you have an idea of the timing on that? Of when we'd want to have that discussion?
I do not. I know that there was a discussion previously. I know that they were trying to figure out what it would look like
Okay.
so that they would have
Is that a
something
test
to
score
present.
issue? Is that a test score issue? No.
No, not test score, the other portion of the policy in
Okay.
reference to, demonstration of the academic expectations.
Did
Okay.
you say that it was for the class of 2023, though, so we're,
No, we're 22.
Current
No, but-
juniors,
but,
incoming
oh,
juniors.
for the incoming, we're already, okay.
Okay, so that might be coming up, and now we know what it's about. Is fundraising, is there a reason that's separated from the booster clubs?
No,
No? So,
they go together. They go,
so we can take that off?
they are two different, they are two different ideas. The
Okay.
fundraising question that came up this summer, I think is
Right.
closely linked to the booster clubs, but not
Gotcha.
exactly the same.
Okay. And homework policy is on there in perpetuity until, well, actually, we might have to, because we may end up taking some of that language out if it gets covered in the grading policy. So that's what we've come up, I have one last question, Ms. Deasy, on August 31st with our next regular meeting. Will you be ready to give us here's what we're looking at for the year?
Yes.
So I can just talk with you about what needs to get prioritized. So, I'm not sure what that's exactly going to look like. Obviously, we at least took care of immunizations in the spring, which otherwise would have been a big one, but, okay?
Yep.
All right, so, at this point, well, open discussion, anything anybody needs to have as a discussion? Okay, so now's the time for public comment. What I think the best thing for me to do is back up, and we can put some chairs here if anybody would like to comment. The normal rules for our Board of Ed meetings is it's actually, and again, the numbers here are smaller, is about a 3-minute time limit. It is supposed to be restricted to agenda items. I certainly have no problem allowing a certain degree of latitude when it comes to the mass. If you would like to talk about the mass as a vague topic, we'll be doing that. But again, if you could confine your comments to the 3 minutes. We had you sign in at the time because what we thought we were going to do was speak into the phone and say, okay, please could Sue, Judy, Kim, and Jim come on down, because we were fairly packed in that room. However, at this point, because I don't know who is still here and who is not, I'm just going to do it as Mrs. Vitale does with the regular meeting. and simply call you up. Hold on a second, don't let me get some chairs. So if you're sitting here, there should be no problem with anybody hearing you. Get my stuff out of the way. So if any members of the public would like to address the policy, one thing I will, no, come on up. If there's anything that we voted on tonight and you wished you'd had the chance to give input on that, the reason we went ahead and voted on it is because the only thing that our vote does here in policy is we address the language and we move it on to the full board. So if you have a comment to make about anything we voted on tonight that you wish to have taken into consideration, please say so, because there's always next Tuesday when we could take action on that. Okay?
Hi.
If you could just say your name, please.
Yes, my name is Judy Costa. Do I have to say where I live? I've watched them, but I've never.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, it's
We
okay.
don't usually have people at policy, sorry.
I live at 1492 Mill Plain Road, and I wrote earlier today about my desire for my children to have a choice whether or not to wear masks. So I believe the board fully knows where I stand on the opportunity to give students their choice and families to do the best decision. But in light of Lamont's decision, I appreciate that this was put on the policy agenda. So I have an elementary student and a high school student, so I'd just like to speak briefly about what I feel as a parent and some of the challenges they have. For my elementary student, I guess when I hear earlier today, not quite sure how to fit in those extra breaks, I'm not sure why, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and create times, why we're not looking at times that are naturally built into the schedule that would allow for these to naturally occur. And right away, one thing I thought of, my daughter's a 5th grader, is independent reading time. Why can't they use that time to spread out more than 3 feet within the class? It's quiet time, that's the nature of it, to not be doing group or small group or partnering activities. Why can't we build mask break into independent reading time? Or also possibly independent math time. Maybe you end a period 5 minutes early and start the next period 5 minutes later. I think that it can be done, thinking a little bit inside out the box, but without looking to add this as a component and layer, but instead integrate it to what already exists for them. So that's what I would ask. And then for the high school level, I had a high schooler, he actually had a great freshman year. The one time I got concerned, and Mr. Papa George and Sans Cleary spoke to me those days, were inconsistency in the heating and cooling system of the classroom of Ludlow. And he actually reached out to me when his classroom was 90 degrees and said, you know, I finished my assignment. I'm like, why are you texting me? He goes, it's really hot in here. I'm thinking I'm going to go to the nurse, or should I stick it out and go to the next period? And he said the teacher was wonderful, but that she had expressed that the fans couldn't go on because of COVID regulation. And so kind of, you know, they were almost done with class. Mr. Papa George explained to me that there is a process to identify classrooms that do reach high heat, but are all the teachers aware of what that is, and to have a strategy to select another opportunity to conduct their lesson possibly in a cooler part? It might not always be available, but when you have a pretty well-adjusted kid who's on board with the mask, saying he's really not paying attention to the curriculum in his calculus class because he's focusing on really breathing in a 90-degree classroom, it's difficult. So we have a strategy for that. So that's how I just asked to, at the elementary level, please just look at opportunities that exist. And I do think that we can get a schedule if you look at opportunities that exist already in the schedule that lend themselves to social distancing. And for the high schoolers or any buildings that don't have air conditioning, I would just really like a clear policy or checkpoint system. When do we move this class outside? When do we reach out to the more suitable airflow of the classroom? Because I don't think that they should stick it out and everyone has a different barometer. And I just want to say, I don't think that I was ever aware, or my child, that at the high school, passing in hallways, that they could have brought down their masks. That was a new revelation for me tonight. And also that they would feel comfortable in the classroom doing the same. So I just want to express that if those policies were implemented, to maybe really communicate them better to parents. Maybe they were. I totally missed that. I don't know if I'm the only one, so I'll say that. Okay, so that's it. So thank you for listening and for putting this on the agenda. I appreciate it. Oh, can I say one last thing? Sure, I'm sorry. Judy Costa again. I work with children, 3 to 8-year-olds. I would be very careful with the implication that when you remove your mask, you become dangerous or a vector of this virus. It is making them overwhelmed to take down their mask and fearful of each other. When we heard the examples, we're encouraging them to play a part. I get that as an instinct. I work with kids 3 to 8. They're becoming fearful of each other. They're nervous they're going to make their grandparents sick. They don't recognize. I would challenge most kindergartners to bump into their teacher, their kindergarten teacher, outside of the studio, outside, I work in a dance studio, outside of the classroom, and have their teacher wave to them but not hear their voice. And I guarantee you they would have trepidation. Do I know that person? These kids really need to just be embraced and not be with their mask down, that there's a potential for them to spread anything, which is what I'm a little nervous might happen in light of some of that. I'm sorry. That's it.
Hello, my name is Jim Kutso. I live on 270 Palomar Drive in Fairfield, Connecticut. On February 4th, my son Kevin Kutso took his life. He had depression, and I am sure it was exacerbated by the COVID lockdown, remote learning policies that we implemented. All activities taken away, being forced to look at a screen all day long. Several weeks later, after the death of my son, town of Fairfield said, well, Mike Cummings said that we're going to go back to full in-person learning because we're worried about the mental health of our kids. Who voted? I'd like to know who voted on that and what science was used. I have a couple quotes here from Dr. Fauci. There's no, and I'm just going to say I'm pro-choice for masks, okay? If you want to wear them, wear them. I don't think they do anything. We see people here tonight because they can't see because their glasses are fogging up. They're falling off. They're not tight-fitting masks. They're not N95 masks. Here's Dr. Fauci. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often there are unintended consequences. Here's another one regarding mask mandates for kids. Hopefully, this will be a temporary thing. Temporary enough that it doesn't have any lasting negative impact on them, meaning the kids. And we don't know what we're doing to these kids. We already know that self-harm has gone up 20% in the United States in youth. We also know that there's been a 330% increase in self-harm in the Northeast. And my son, he did not die of COVID, but he died of COVID. And I ask of you people who are making these decisions to be brave and think about what we're doing to kids. I'm pretty sure I heard Mike Cummings say today regarding the recess, we want them running away from each other and not interacting with each other. I was disgusted by that, disgusted. We have someone whose job is who's in charge of our kids' lives for most of their lives saying we want them running away from each other and not interacting with each other. We're not taking in the social, emotional factors that go in through learning. And I pray, I'm doing work, I'm trying to get word out, but I pray that something doesn't happen to other people's family as what happened to my family. So when you're voting on these things, please, have courage, have courage. And another thing, there seems to be rules for thee, but not for me. Here's a picture of the Connecticut Education Association with teachers, with Fairfield teachers. Looks like they're having a good time, they're close, and they're not wearing masks. But yet kids have to wear masks all day long. We're doing all this work, and there's going to be a Delta variant. There's going to be an Echo variant. There's going to be a Foxtrot variant. When does it end? When does it end? I pray that no one has to go through what me and Kristen are going through, and my surviving son, William. But be brave in making your choices. Thank you.
I'm freezing, so bear with me, please. My name is Kim Santos. I live on 65 Karen Street here in Fairfield. I do not have any children in the school system. I never had any children of my own. However, I did raise 2 boys that are doing great and were raised. They moved in with me. One went to Ward and the other one was in 7th grade over at Brian McMahon and went through the school system. They're both doing great. But I'm here really because I care. We all do about these kids. And, you know, we don't think of change as a solution, but I think that's our opportunity. The bottom line is, we're people, we're all people, whether we want the choice or want to cover our kids' faces or not, but we're just people that care about these kids, all of us in this room and on the phone. And, you know, I've been working on something, and I have this vision. And I don't even know if this is the right forum, but I wanted to be here just to test it. I have a vision, and I think that's where change can come, is if we look to where we want to be. I have a vision to make Fairfield remarkable. It's a memorable and portable vision, and to lead people into making really good decisions around that vision. Organize all the decisions around making Fairfield remarkable. I'm already working with the first selectman on some ideas with her, because I think we are dealing with systemic fear in the entire country, in the entire world. I mean, all the decisions being made, we're seeing what's happening in the world right now. These kids are scared. They need us to be confident. So the opportunity really, I think, is for us to really dig deeper on what kind of choices are we making for these kids. Now, I'm not here to deliver next steps or anything like that. I just wanted to kind of paint the picture of what I'm about, and perhaps maybe at some point in the future, you think, wow, maybe we should look at making Fairfield remarkable. And wouldn't it be great if we're the light of the state, and then we're the light of the country? So my vision's a lot bigger than just Fairfield, but I have to start somewhere, and so I'm here. So that's really all I have to say. It's really about shifting the culture. And I think a lot of people would like to, we all want the best for the kids. And so that's all I really can say. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Nocerino. I don't have anything written down. Just kind of wanted to see how the meeting went. It went differently than expected. But I wanted to talk quickly about something that Judy touched on, which spoke to me a lot, and that's what we're messaging to kids in school about what's going on, not just with the world, because God, what a burden, but just what's going on with these things that we're asking them to do every day. I'm speaking from the perspective of a young, well, I'm not young, I wish, a mother of young children, 5 and 3. My daughter's going to kindergarten this year. My plan has always been to send her to North Stratfield. I literally live across the street. We're doing something different for the year, and I'm hopeful that maybe that'll change in the future. But something that I hear a lot from her now, because she is kind of coming out of her preschool years into a summer with a lot of school-age children, she's getting a lot of different messages that she didn't receive in preschool, I think, because they are pretty isolated. She doesn't know about giving germs to people. She didn't know about the worry that she would need to have when she got to see her Gigi on the weekends or when she comes down to visit once a week. These are not things that she's ever thought about, mostly because I shielded her from that. And again, I think preschool is just a different place. She's now engaging in camps and all these things over the summer with kids who have been in school who are older than her, who are aware of this stuff. And she's coming home freaked out. And as a mom, you know, you guys probably have children that are older than mine, I think, so you're deep into the emotional part of parenting. I am kind of just dipping my toe out of the laborious part of physically caring for kids and getting into the crying at night part. She's coming home worried about this stuff, and it's because she's never been exposed to it before. I think it would be great if there would be some way, and I don't even, not just for school teachers and administrators, but for parents too, for us to figure out a way to talk to these kids about what they're going through on a daily basis in a way that is smart, but also not freaking them out. You know, not to be anecdotal, but I had friends at one of the elementary schools who had a teacher who had blue tape at the front of the classroom and would yell at a kid if they came across the tape, a kindergartner. These are the things that these kids are taking home with them, and they don't know how to talk about them because they're 5, and how do you express that? I would love if there was an opportunity for us to influence how this is talked about in school, and also maybe an opportunity for parents to get involved in figuring out how we can talk to them about this at home too. Because they're doing all these physical things that are odd for them. They're wearing masks. They're being told not to touch each other at recess. They're being distanced from their friends during class lunch. And I know that they all seem like they're taking this in stride, and I really hope that they are. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't thinking about all these messages that are coming at them. And I would love an opportunity for there to be open discussion with the people who spend half of our kids' waking hours with them all day, their teachers, their lunch monitors, their recess monitors, and figuring out what's appropriate to say and what is beneficial to say and what's even necessary to say. I'm ignorant to whether or not that's been touched upon last year. Like I said, I'm brand new to kindergarten and to school-age children. But if it hasn't, I would love that. That's really it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
I was waiting. I don't have anything to say. Kim Grant, 315 South Pine Creek Road. I'm here for Mass Choice for the children of Fairfield. My family will be leaving this year. We will be going to a different state, hopefully looking for something different. If nothing else, we're closer to other places where we can get to something different than the Northeast. But 2 things I'd like to point out that I heard tonight. 1, middle school and high schoolers just using bathrooms. You're not sitting in a classroom where you raise your hand and you take the little pass or the little stick off the wall. You know, they're given a little more freedom. Use it between class, whatever it might be. Can't tell you the amount of times I picked my children up this year because I spent 4 hours a day driving to 3 different schools because you all asked me to, not put my children on the bus.
How many times I picked my children up and I was told, Mom, can you get us home? Get me home, please, please, please. I wasn't able to use the bathroom. What do you mean you couldn't use the bathroom? Mom, I couldn't do it between class. There's not enough time. Mom, my teacher wouldn't let me go. What do you mean your teacher won't let you go? You're a good student. You have straight A's. I've never had a problem with you. No teacher's ever called me. No, Mommy, they wouldn't let me go. So if my child can't use the bathroom, it's a lot to ask them to pull their mask down or to feel comfortable enough to say to a teacher, I need a breath. This is hot. I'm having anxiety. These are not adults. My child at 13 started high school. He's not an adult. At 14, he's not an adult. He still calls me Mommy. He still asks me occasionally, Mom, may I have an apple? Like, what? Go, of course you can. You don't have to ask this stuff. They're children. They need the guidance. They still need it. My second reminder is not to the Board of Ed, although I hope you listen. To everyone that works for Fairfield Public Schools, and I wish Mr. Cummings was still sitting here. You are here for the children. That is your main focus, and I know all of you know that because I was a teacher. I gave my life to kids before I had my own children. So I worked with educators. You all love children. That's why you're here. That's why you do what you do. Every decision you make, please, all we parents here is what the teachers, the teachers, they gotta have the 3 feet. It's gotta be the same inside and out. Nope, nope, I don't care. It's not about making the teacher's life easy. This is about what is doing what's best for the kids. And last year you failed. That was a hard year. It was a hard year for a lot of kids. Some kids did great. But you need to think every single day when you're making these decisions, is this what's right for kids? How is this going to turn out in 5 years? Because it's not turning out okay. And I'm scared to death to send my 5-year-old to kindergarten this year. And it won't be with you guys, but it'll be somewhere else. And I'm scared from what I witnessed last year by the school district. I can't imagine his tiny little face being masked as he sits there and learns his letter sounds. And he tries to make friends. How do you make friends when you can't see somebody's face? Please, everything you do, think about the kids.
Thank you.
My name is Melissa Longo. I live at 3791 Congress Street. I have to say, my daughter doesn't understand. I have a 6 and a 4-year-old, both are girls. Mommy, I see this girl at dance class, but I don't recognize her because she can't see her face. She can't read instructions because she can't see the teacher's face. She doesn't know if someone is smiling or happy or sad because she can't see their face. She's the type of child where this is going to end poorly for her. This is not normal. And I'm so sick and tired of people saying this is the new normal and kids are resilient. Kids need their parents. They need their educators. They need their teachers to be supportive of them and not tell them that if they accidentally knock over a partition that they need to go stand away from their other classmates. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to sit here and listen to the superintendent who's supposed to be here for all of us, the people on the phone and everyone else who's in this town to stand for us. So for him to say, we want kids to go away from each other because he's scared, that's unacceptable. How did this man even get into this position is mind-boggling to me, that he can sit here and say, I'm not going to listen, straight up said, I'm not going to listen to what the CDC guidelines are as far as being 3 feet apart outside. It makes no sense to any of us sitting here. None of this does. This is uncomfortable for me, and I'm an adult. Think of what it's doing to 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-old children, high school kids. I cannot even imagine going through my high school years with this on my face, yearbook photos, being in the gym, playing sports. It's unnatural. It's not normal. None of this is normal, and none of this should be implied to our children to suck it up and take this on the chin and shoulder the burden for a disease that they have virtually no effect from. I mean, it's just, I don't understand. The fact that our governor is handing this down just speaks volumes about it, because we are only one of however many states in this country, 3 or 4, if I'm incorrect, please correct me, that are requiring masks on children. How are you expected to get an education when 90% of the time your teachers are basically telling you, keep your mask on, keep your distance, keep your mask on, keep your distance? A kid who doesn't have anxiety is going to come out of this with more anxiety than we know what to do with. And as parents, we have to deal with that. What am I supposed to tell my daughter? Both of my kids, suck it up? Absolutely not. I'm going to be honest with you. I have never once put a mask on my child, and I'm not about to start now, because this is not fair to them. It's not fair to me as a parent. We're taking their childhood from them. We are stripping everything, all the fun, all the activities, and we're asking them to suck it up for 1 more year or until there's a vaccine. Is that what's going to be next? Suck up the masks until there's a vaccine? What about our children? We should have a choice. These are our children. We lend them to you. They belong to us. We should have the right to say, in public school, you can wear this, you can't wear that. You want to wear a mask on your face? You want to be that for your child? That's totally your prerogative. That's your child. Nowhere should any parent have to tell another parent what to put on their child's face, when essentially all it's doing is silencing them. And that's not okay with me. And I will not accept this, that this is just the way that it is. There's no reason why our children in a classroom can't be 3 feet apart without a mask on at any given day, at any given time. It just doesn't make sense to me. While they're eating, while they're sitting next to each other, it's torturous. It's like, look, but don't touch. Your friends are right there, but they're passing notes to each other. They can't talk to each other. It's socially, emotionally, it's taking its toll on them. And for people to say, kids are resilient, they're going to be fine, they are not fine. Trust me. There is no child that is okay with this. And I really wish that there was a forum that we could have for children to speak up and say, this is exactly what I'm going through. So that they're not fair. I would have brought my daughter here today had I thought that she would have enough courage to sit here and say what she feels, but she doesn't, because she's 6 years old. And I'm her parent. I'm supposed to protect her from this. This is not okay. A superintendent saying that your children should run away when they play together is not okay. None of this is okay. And I just hope that this needs to change this year. Like, this cannot continue to go on. People are at a breaking point. I mean, look what happened earlier. This is making us all anxiety-ridden. These are not the parents that we want to be talking to you about this right now. There should be other things. And it's just sad that this is where our town is right now, because I feel like we could have done such a better job, and I'm disappointed. And I really, really hope that our future and our children's future going forward is much better than what it looks like right now, because it's very dim and they're not having fun. School is not a place where they are having fun or they're looking at as a positive place to be. They're fearful, and that's sad to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? While discipline comes up, I just feel the need to speak to one point, and I think our superintendent he's perfectly capable of speaking for himself, and I'm not sure if all of his words came through. I just feel the need to address just that one point about the recess, in that what Mr. Cummings was saying was the idea of running, period. I don't believe he was attempting to communicate that for the safety of our children, we are telling them to run away from each other. And again, it's not that he needs me to defend him, but I do believe that that was a point that was misunderstood.
Can you take a poll on that? Because I think every single person in this room heard him say, run away, take your mask off and run away from each other. And that's correct, but in the course,
I'm bringing this up because it's absolutely fine. I invited it by speaking to public comment.
I'm sorry.
No, it's absolutely fine. Okay, sorry, Ms. Flynn.
No problem. Katie Flynn, 204 Grandview Road. In listening to the policies that are being covered tonight, I wanted to ask that there be a continued conversation and addressing of the variety of ways in which our buildings are used and utilized this school year. and that a policy reflects who is the point of contact for approvals, as well as a consistency policy to address how approvals are made for both parent and community organizations. There's a great need for more specifications for how and why in-school and out-of-school hours events are approved. Policies should be consistent across levels, buildings, and organizations. For example, Parks and Rec, PTAs, Girl and Boy Scouts. We've seen our buildings used all summer by Parks and Rec. We see sand jam going on, and we have organizations, our PTAs specifically, that had spent most of this year unable to fundraise, unable to throw events on school properties, and I think that has been a huge disservice that could have helped our socio-emotional learning at this time. Our parents are here to support, you see that here, and I think it would be a good medium. And SAFE, Sans Cleary yesterday said very clearly that he wants the least restrictive policies while still seeing public health guidelines, and I think we can do that. So volunteer approvals for in-school and out-of-school hours, parent opportunities such as welcome coffees, conferences, PTA meetings, open house, picture day, programming, walkathons, book fairs. I mean, the list goes on and on. We have 11 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, 3 high schools, and all of them are unique and special, and I think that this year really stripped that away. We lost core events, core fundraising that provides programming to our teachers, and I really worry that if we keep extending this, we're going to see more inequity. Because frankly, there are PTAs in this town that can afford to move off property. They can rent facilities, and there are some that cannot. So we're going to further exacerbate an already inequity we see in town. So I really implore you to look at this before the school year starts. Many of us would love our welcome coffees to get kicked off, so thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Jennifer DeLaurentis. I'm at 175 Pepera Road. Just kind of echoing what a lot of people spoke about today. Obviously, I'm sure you saw from some of my head nodding that I'm also opposed to a mask mandate. I think it should be up to the individual based on their circumstances, especially given the way the numbers have been staying down. I'm from Ireland originally. I came here in 8th grade. Currently, they not only don't require masks for children 13 and under there, but they're not recommended, and they haven't had them the entire time, and we're a year and a half plus later. So my daughter will be going, my kids are 3 and 5, my daughter will be going into kindergarten this year. We also thought we were going to go the public school route, and we kind of changed our plans because of a lot of this, but she was in preschool and had mask wearing, but there was a lot more flexibility from what it sounds like just in listening to the policy here tonight. But I did see just a lot of things as far as not being able to hear the teacher, just the whole, her confidence kind of going down when she had it on, and even just like difficulty with friends and that sort of thing. So I really see how the social emotional part and even just like the learning delays with the mask wearing for an entire day could have negative impacts. And I've read a lot of studies ad nauseum about, cloth masks really not doing anything. I really would have liked to see the remote learning option for people who really need that. From what someone told me tonight, I guess the funding just wasn't there for that, but I know it sounded like there's more discussion if people are home, that there might be an option for them to have some additional learning from home. I don't know what the difference is between the logging in and the teacher doing dual teaching and having just some things for them to do so they can continue learning if they're quarantining. But I don't know, it was an eye-opening meeting tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And before you leave, because this is, I think, it's an important point for the public, we've been trying to get it out there. The no local remote learning academy is because it's not legal. It has nothing to do with how we allocated our funding. It's that as an allowable means of delivering education, full remote learning academy is not a legal option this year. So even if we had all the money in the world, as of right now, unless something changes, we couldn't do that. So I think that's worth clarifying. Thank you for saying this. Anybody else? Needless to say, if something occurs to you later than this, you're always welcome to email the 3 of us. We are the policy committee as well as the full board.
thank you so much for coming tonight and making a long day of it. Meeting adjourned, and again, we'll be voting on these policies next Tuesday. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
You did.
Marco?
Good luck to you.
I don't know what to do now. What do I need to do to end this?
Nothing, I can end it for you. No worries.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you for staying with us.
Not a problem.